Hello there. Welcome to AV Rant. If you're seeing this, you are watching the behind the scenes version. The big clue might be the green screen next to me here. That's not the way
I'm
completed videos normally
I
look.
am a virtual reality guy.
That's right. So yes, this is behind the scenes. As such, there might be audio dropouts since we're just using Google Hangouts. Going to be talking about images that may or may not fill your entire screen in this version. But if you would like to see things all cleaned up, if you would like certainly the audio to be cleaned up, still having lip sync issues every now and then. So
Sorry
whatever.
about that.
Can't be avoided entirely, but the audio will certainly be cleaned up. You'll be able to see the images that we're referencing in the completed video version. So I usually post that on Wednesdays, and yeah, we also put. Well, I'll say it on the actual podcast since it's a thing. So okay, that's the preamble. Don't be alarmed if the quality of this version is not great because it's behind the scenes. And with all of that said, and you forewarned, I shall switch over to Tom and he can begin the podcast whenever he pleases.
Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And yeah, Tom's got news about the weekend. I'm not sure if you wanted to say it on air. I think that's what you said you wanted to say.
I'll say some of it because it's a long thing. But so we got invited by friends to go to stay at a Disney property, which we haven't done before because we don't make that much money. So and with three kids, everything gets real expensive real fast.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they all have worked for Disney all their lives and all this other garbage. So they all have points and things and just I don't know. Anyways, they were like, "Oh yeah, it's no big deal. Just come stay." Like, okay,
Okay.
so we did. The coolest thing we did. Yeah, the coolest thing we did was that we went to the Void, which I don't know if you've heard of. I
Hmm.
hadn't heard of it, but apparently they're going to open like 6 more locations. But it is essentially an Oculus Rift powered virtual reality
Okay. All right.
experience, and it's all based on Star Wars. So you are
Okay.
rebels that are dressing up as uh, stormtroopers,
Yep.
and then you infiltrate a base to go see something, and then you shoot a bunch of people, and then you get out.
Okay.
Uh, theoretically, I guess I don't know. So I'd never done VR before,
Okay.
not in the the latest sense. So this was all Oculus Rift powered. I could tell because it said Oculus
Yep.
on it.
Branded,
So,
sure.
I mean, they were branding
They
it.
want you to know which one
Yeah,
you're using. Yeah.
big headphones, big massive headphones. There was a microphone someplace in this thing. It was
Okay.
probably in the visor. The visor it was quite heavy, and there
Hmm.
was a jacket. There's a vest that you wore that would
Hmm.
vibrate and do other things.
Okay.
Uh, and you put this thing on and like your arms like when you stretch out your arms they were clad in the armor of the
Okay.
stormtroopers,
Cool.
and everything on the walls and stuff like that would look different and all of that. So my kids loved it. I thought it was very cool.
Okay.
But there were still some pretty major tracking issues. Like if everybody reached to do the same thing at the same time, like 18 arms would appear out of
Yeah.
nowhere
All right.
and go there. And you would go to touch something, and where you saw it and where its physical location was didn't sync up. Like it was
Ah.
an inch or two to the right
So they
of.
were almost doing an augmented reality, but in virtual reality.
Well, so
Interesting.
there was at the very end there was a droid. There was like an R2 unit that was in the elevator with you as you
Okay.
were doing whatever, and then when you stepped out, when you took your visor off or whatever, there was really a droid there, but
Okay.
you could feel the whatever. But a lot of it was like I was putting my hand on the wall, and the wall just ended.
Ah.
I mean, but in the VR, what you could see, which it kept
It
going up,
continued.
of
Right.
course, yeah. But there was some cool stuff. Like you stepped out onto a platform that was over a bunch of lava, and you could feel heat, in your face and all around you and stuff like that. Like I don't know if that was the vest doing that or if it was they had like a hot fan blowing on you.
Yeah.
But there was some really cool stuff, and especially like when the first time you stepped out of the spaceship onto this sort of floating platform thingy,
Uh huh.
you look down, you're like, it's a metal grate floating over a lava river, and you could feel heat. I'm like, I don't want to step on that thing. It doesn't look very safe. I don't want to step on that. It was quite disorienting to
Hmm.
moving. Just walking in general was very
Right.
hard to do
Yeah.
because your equilibrium was off. But very cool experience. So it was worth like $38 a person to do it. I don't know.
About how long was the experience? Under 10 minutes, I'm guessing?
15 to
Oh,
20
about 15 minutes. Okay.
Yeah.
It's not too bad.
It's $2 a minute or $3 a minute or something like that. That's still pretty pricey. And they were shuffling people in there all day long. You had to make appointments and everything. But that was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. So there was that. I also went to a dude's house who was extremely wealthy. And I went into his home theater. And it was like, he's got this great massive flat screen TV.
Okay.
And some clip speakers up front, like little small towers. Like I've never seen. I mean, they were real small. The center was pretty big at this time, but all the rest of the speakers were overhead speakers, and his couch was all the way against the back wall with the surround backs directly above his head, and his surrounds like 4 feet in front of him, all the way on the sides of the room. I'm like, oh,
all that money.
Yeah,
money doesn't guarantee anything. It still has to be put to good use.
I mean, okay, so I don't really blame people who end up in this situation, because a lot of times they're trusting, they're builders, and they're trusting everybody else to know what to do, and they are at, they're I want a surround sound home theater. Well, they got a surround sound home theater. No one told them to put their couch back there, though. No one in their right mind would have put the couch where it needed to be for those speakers to work. Like, no one would have put a couch in that location there to block the door to get in.
Yes, that is poor design.
But they did get surround sound, so I can't really blame them, and I'm sure it's still a pretty decent experience in there. But whatever. All right, this is AV Rant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us a question at avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com. Leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/AVRant YouTube.com/AVRant. You can contact us directly at Rob at AVRant.com. His Twitter is at First Reflect. I'm Tom at AVRant.com. My Twitter is at AVRant_Tom. Yeah, and those of you that are wondering, and by this point you aren't anymore because the podcast has gone up, but I did not post the podcast yet. I was gone all weekend, and I was gone from Thursday till late Sunday. And then today was my youngest son's birthday, so
happy birthday.
He's 9 years old going on. I'm gonna kill him if he doesn't straighten up. So he's at that age between, I don't know where the end of it is. It starts around 9. And you just are like, I can't. I had to give. Today was the
32, 9 to 32. I think is the bad time.
25. I started realizing what a jerk I was at around 25.
25 is when I began all of my life's problems. So
but
32. Yeah.
32. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to 32, I guess. But my 15-year-old had his first driving lesson from me today, so that was nerve-wracking. And he only hit one curb, but we were in the parking lot, so it was okay. All right, we want to thank our listeners of the week. To thank our listeners of the week, to be a listener of the week, all you have to do is support the podcast in some way. One way so you can do that is to go to www.avrant.com and click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, which will take you to a PayPal donation site. You can use your PayPal account or a credit card to leave us some money. PayPal handles all that. We never see your card number, nor do we want to. So we want to thank Corey, David, Michael, and Earl for being our listeners of this last week. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, Corey, David, Michael, and Earl, thank you so much for those donations. Cool to see that many people donating again. So that's nice to see.
I would have gotten myself a cup of water before I start this podcast.
Well, at some point I'll ramble on. So
yes, probably when you answer that question about getting lossless audio from
devices, from Plex and that type of thing. Yeah.
Once you start talking about that, I'm out. All right. We also thank our 61 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon is a service where you can sign up and it will take a monthly donation from your account and give it to the artists or content creators of your choice. So we want to thank our 61 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, that is patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you would like to sign up. And thanks so much to our 61 patrons.
Yeah. If you can't support us financially, just find some way to support us and then let us know. One way you could do that is by talking us up. So Bob told Optima that AVRant helped him decide which of their projector models to buy. And Rob M, who is different than Rob U, emailed Acoustic Panels in Canada to let them know he heard about them from us. So thank you, Bob, and thank you, Rob.
Yeah, Bob and Rob, thank you very much for talking us up to those retailers, and congratulations on your purchases. Those will be nice.
I'm sure that Insteon Hub got mailed. I'm pretty
Yes.
sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
That should be out there. Hopefully Joshua is enjoying that.
Hopefully. Emotiva has released their new Stealth Series PA1 Class D monoblock amplifier. This is in the news. It uses an ICE amp module rated for 140 watts into 8 ohms, 300 watts into 4 ohms, and a stable output into as low as 2.5 ohms. Yeah, I bet you better not go to 2.4, though. I'm just going to throw that out there. The Stealth Series is targeted more towards professional applications, so that input is a combo XLR and quarter-inch jack, but they can accept both balanced and unbalanced signals, so a simple RCA to TS cable can work. As a universal power supply, they can be plugged into any outlet from 100 to 264 volts at 50 or 60 hertz with automatic detection. They're small and fanless with high efficiency and good signal to noise ratio. They're $300 a pop. I gotta be honest with you, I'm not a fan of the ICE amps, but if anybody could do an ICE amp right, it would probably be Emotiva. So
yeah, I mean the specs all looked good. You obviously can't judge everything by specs, but Emotiva is very honest with their specs, and
they are.
Specs
And
looks good.
The problem I've always had with ICE amps is that basically, for those who don't know, an ICE amp module is made by Bang & Olufsen.
That's right.
Bang & Olufsen created the ICE amps so that they could make a small enough amplifier to put inside their ridiculously shaped speakers. They have these circles and that thing that looks like you should put your cigarettes out in it, stuff like that. So they want all their speakers to be self-powered, so they want these the amps. So they made these ICE amps, and what ended up being a pretty brilliant, though at the time I was perplexed by a decision. They decided to sell these things to just about anybody who will buy them.
Yeah.
So you can buy an ICE amp and then put it in your own case and say, hey, here's an ICE amp, and I have made it better by putting it in my case, and sell it for a markup. And people did that for a really long time.
Oh, yeah.
And therefore, we ran into issues with some of the ICE amplifiers being, weird and non-linear and doing strange things, because what Bang & Olufsen wanted them to do was not necessarily what everybody else wants them to do. So because Bang & Olufsen has their own target curve that they were going for.
And they design their own drivers and their own crossovers and all this stuff so they can control the impedance at given frequencies and make it so that it works nice. Because there's no reason why the ICE amp Class D amplifiers can't work nicely with a given pair of speakers if those pair of speakers have the type of impedance profile that works nicely with a Class D amp. It can totally work great. And these are nice and small, no fan in them, so you're not going to have any noise, very low heat, and they designed it so that two of them can go side by side in a single height rack mount. That was Emotiva's choice to make them that type of shape and size. So yeah, lots good here in my opinion. Worth a look if you wanted monoblocks with some pretty hefty power to them. And like Seymour AV, they have their ice block amplifiers, monoblocks, but one that's similar to this is about $900 from Seymour. So $300 each, while not super inexpensive. If you're gonna get 11 of them, that's a whole lot of money. But not too bad for a well-designed ice amp. So good on Emotiva. Hopefully someone will try them out and tell us if they work well or not.
And my reservations really come from, I think, poor implementations in the past, and it was early in the ice amp.
And a lot of that was power supply stuff, and Emotiva is quite good with their switch mode power supplies now, so yeah.
So probably won't have the same problems, but yeah. So Amazon Prime Video is getting Atmos support. Their Amazon original show, Tom Clancy's Jack Ryan, will be the first content on Amazon Prime Video with an Atmos soundtrack when it debuts August 31st, which I will be able to stream, but I probably will not because I never stream anything from Amazon anymore. Amazon has only confirmed their Fire TV and Fire TV Cube as hardware devices that will output Atmos from Amazon Prime Video. So yeah, I have not been super impressed with their streaming service, to be honest with you, though. I think it's just more like, I've really enjoyed Hulu, and I thought I wasn't going to, and I've been kind of stealing it from my friend, and it was working, and then one day it didn't work, and my wife looked at me and says, well, you're going to have to buy Hulu. I'm like, I have to buy Hulu. Like, it's okay. We're buying Hulu. It's ours.
Time to subscribe.
But yeah.
Well, Amazon and Apple seem to have sorted out whatever their kerfuffle was, because Amazon Prime Video is now available on the Apple TV. So hopefully when the Apple TV 4K gets its Atmos update in the fall, hopefully they're still playing nice with each other, and Amazon will let Prime Video work with Atmos on that. But who knows? They're like, yeah, it'll work on our Fire TV. Haven't said anything about anybody else yet.
That would be stupid if they just had it on the Prime TV. I will say, though, that I started watching Cloak and Dagger on Hulu, and that has been very good. My wife really likes it.
They went and previewed 2 episodes on Canadian television, but then they're like, nope, go over to this channel. And I'm like, nope, not going to do that because it's only available in standard def in Canada. So nuts to all of that.
No, the first episode was fantastic, but it kind of slowed down a little bit. But we're on episode 7 here. Budget. All right, yeah, David wanted to comment on the 95%. These are comments from our listeners. I'm sorry, I'm not reading the title headers here because I'm whatever. Wanted to comment on the 95% drop in bandwidth that Bob in the Philippines was experiencing when he tried using a VPN. David just wanted to double check if Bob is potentially using a cheap router or an older, not very powerful CPU. Since all data packets have to be encrypted and decrypted using a VPN, having a low power CPU or a poor quality router can lead to a bad bottleneck with slow data rates. Just something to be aware of. And speaking of Bob in the Philippines, Bob tried a different VPN, but he got the same 95% drop in bandwidth. So it's either what David just said, or it's his ISP throttling VPNs. He did a big update last year and had fiber optic internet installed. So he's pretty sure his gear is up to date. I would not trust that. Google your gear. He did want to clarify that US TV Now is available to anyone with a US billing address, not strictly military. No VPN needed, but they are just streaming US network TV, so no premium cable channels, and it's just streaming live TV, so time differences and commercials are present. I wish I had known about that in Australia. I probably wouldn't have been a difference, but I wish I had known that. Lastly, Ken sent us an update. He asked last week if the Denon S530 BT receiver would give him a decent room correction at the lowest price for his 3.1 living room setup. It had no room correction, so the answer was no. We suggested spending a little bit more on the Yamaha RXV 383 to get at least basic wipeout. He decided he might want to plug in more than 5 HDMI sources, so he settled on a Denon S920W for $230 from Accessories for Less. That gives him HDMI inputs and regular Odyssey multi EQ.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's good.
Pretty good. That's a nice choice. You'll see lots of people recommending the S720 or the S920, or the modern versions. I guess they're up to the 940 and 740 now that have just recently come out, but you'll see lots of places recommending those as sort of their entry level or budget level price for a receiver, because really nice feature set, lots of HDMI inputs, and solid performance. So thumbs up to that choice. I think you'll be happy with that, Ken.
All right, Will on Facebook. Will is using Plex. He already has a computer acting as his Plex server, and he is making full MKV backups of his discs that retain the lossless audio, the True HD or DTS HD, Master Audio, Atmos, or DTSX. Mm-hmm. I'm about to get my water. Which streaming boxes can play the full lossless audio using their Plex player? Can any of the following do it? Apple TV 4K, Roku 4, Xbox One S, Amazon Fire TV. I'm going to say... Ooh, this would be a total guess. I want to say the Xbox One S and the Apple TV. Am I right?
Well, it's a big old no to all 4 of those, unfortunately. God. Now, not because of the hardware. Like, obviously, the Xbox One S, the hardware is capable of outputting lossless audio because it does so when you're playing back a physical disc. But the Plex app has not been updated to make use of that as of yet. Not sure why, but it hasn't. In fact, I had a whole long conversation with Chris Petrin, who we've talked about. Windows Chris, I guess we'll dub him. Had a whole long conversation over Twitter and DMs, because the things got way too long, even for the new larger character count on Twitter. But about the audio capabilities, because I have a day one Xbox One. I never got an S or an X. I'm still on a day one version.
Me too.
And it has consistently been the case where I do have the option of saying send the audio via HDMI, and I do have the option of saying send that audio as a bit stream, but then it gets you to choose which bit stream you want it to send. Your choices are Dolby Digital 5.1, DTS 5.1, or now Atmos. Those are your bit stream options. Right. But what it's doing, my day one Xbox, for everything other than physical discs, is it is decoding the audio from whatever whether that's a game or a streaming service or whatever is decoding the audio internally, mixing it together with any other sounds like your alerts and your badges and all that type of noise and stuff, and then putting it through an encoder and sending it out as a Dolby Digital.
Which is why my surround back speakers have been getting lots of play these days.
Right. But including the Atmos setting, so I made a joke. I'm like, when everything is Atmos, nothing is. Well, that's really not accurate, but it turns out like everything, even if it was originated as stereo, comes to your AV receiver as an Atmos bit stream out of an Xbox One.
Which they can't do any sort of up mixing or anything else. So you can't fix it if it was 2-channel to begin with. You can't fix it because
you're stuck with that format.
You're stuck with 2 channels up front, and all the other speakers are being commandeered by the Xbox, and the Xbox is saying play nothing through those because I'm giving you Atmos. I can tell you what to put in every speaker, and you're going to put nothing in those speakers because it's only 2-channel.
But
I guess it's an audiophile's dream.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's you get it exactly the way that
that's right. Yeah. But Chris was saying since he gets all the preview builds, he was like he has an Xbox One X, of course, and he was like, oh, on Netflix, and I believe he said also on Hulu and Vudu, although I might not be 100% right, but not on Amazon Prime. But on these other streaming services, they were able to switch between, so like if it was Dolby Digital Plus 5.1 in the original stream, which you can look up in the information on Netflix, that's what his AV receiver said on its front panel. And then when it was actually Atmos from Netflix, it said Atmos on its front. It was switching just like a physical Blu-ray disc would. So he was like, obviously they have managed to go to like in Windows, you have audio exclusive mode where you can say an app can take exclusive control of the audio output, and that allows you to send the bit stream directly from the sources. Like there's no reason why the Xbox shouldn't be able to do the same thing. But then he just got another update like a couple of days ago, and this is like a preview build, but it took that away. It all went back to being, if you set it to Atmos, everything was Atmos. So, yeah. Anyway, getting back to Plex, none of these can do it. His second question is actually about whether the Apple TV 4K might be able to do it in the future when it gets its tvOS 12 update in the fall and adds Atmos support. And as far as we know, I'll just answer that question now.
I have to get some water in. I left my fan on, so it's making noise. I don't want to have to get out of the signal.
So as far as we know right now, we can't confirm or deny. They have confirmed that it will work for iTunes content. We know that'll be the case. It's all but been confirmed that it'll work for Netflix streaming on the Apple TV 4K. But there's never been a word about lossless Atmos output. So far, all they've talked about would be the Dolby Digital Plus lossy version of Atmos that iTunes is using and that Netflix uses and Amazon Prime will be using, and Vudu uses that as well. They all use the Dolby Digital Plus version of Atmos, which is lossy. So can't count on the Apple TV 4K doing it. The Roku 4 and the Amazon Fire TV. We just heard the Amazon Fire TV is capable of outputting at least Dolby Digital Plus version of Atmos, but it won't do the lossless version of Atmos with Plex. So what is the box that will output full lossless audio using Plex with MKV backups? And that is the NVIDIA Shield. The NVIDIA Shield really is your best streaming set-top box choice if you want to use Plex. Not only that, it can be your Plex server. If you already have a Plex server, of course, you don't have to do that, but it can. But that really is the one you want. You want the NVIDIA Shield if you're a Plex user and if you want lossless audio. And I was mistaken in thinking that a Raspberry Pi should be able to do it using the Plex Media Player, and they call it the Plex Media Player for embedded platforms, but there's one that's specifically for the Raspberry Pi. And since the Plex Media Player is able to output lossless audio when you're using it on a Windows PC, I thought, it must work on the Raspberry Pi too, but no, it does not. I was chatting with another user who's like, I thought this would work on a Raspberry Pi, and I was like, I thought it would work too, and he's like, it doesn't. And apparently it's a hardware limitation of the Raspberry Pi's HDMI output. So, NVIDIA Shield.
Funny how often I see Raspberry Pis these days.
Yeah.
I mean, I walked into a car dealership when I was buying this car, and there was Raspberry Pis behind every monitor. I don't even think they have real computers. I think there's one real computer, and everything else is just Raspberry Pis everywhere. It's kind of cool. So did you finish that question?
I did.
All right, Bobby. I believe this is a multi-step question here. This is a big
well, just two.
No, just two. Okay.
Once we get down to Mike is the big stuff. But Bobby right now.
Bobby is still in the finishing stages of his 12x12 enclosed theater that will sometimes be used as a guest room. He's had in mind the whole time that we get dual SVS PB1000 subwoofers in a 12x12 room. I don't know. But now he's wondering if he could potentially spend a whole lot less than $950 on dual subs. He found the Klipsch R10 SW on sale for only $175 each. Obviously, that low price is attractive. Plus, it's physically smaller and matches the look of his Klipsch speakers. Are dual PB1000s really worth $600 more? Yes. Is that done? Is gonna be done with that question now?
Well,
Yes.
I'm sure
I
we
mean,
can
if
explain
it's
a little
what's
further, but
important,
that is the short answer.
we answered this question last week. I feel like.
Well, very similarly, yeah, when
Yeah.
we were talking about the Dayton Sub 1500 last week.
Right.
And this is even more cut and dry.
Oh, I mean, these subs are -3 down to 32 hertz.
That's
I mean,
right.
they are not getting anywhere near 20 hertz in a
No.
room. I mean, you might be able to, because I don't necessarily disbelieve clips when they say -32.
Oh, they're pretty honest with their subs. Yeah.
But you corner load this bad boy, and you're going to get 28,
Yeah.
29,
Yeah.
something.
Something in
Maybe.
there. It's a
No.
good half an octave of the nicest, deepest bass that is just not there.
Yeah, and
Not
I
there.
to me, like if you said, "Can I go for the SB1000 instead of the PB1000s?" I'd be like, "Well, the room's kind of a little bit too big for them." But if the option is the SB1000s or these guys, I'm sorry, I had to sneeze out
Gesundheit.
the evil. No, I'm sorry. It's definitely the SB1000s.
Sure, but no
Those are
difference in price for the SB1000s versus the
right,
PB1000s. So
but they're smaller. They're physically
they're
smaller.
physically smaller.
Which
That's
I
right.
would go for if I were you. I would definitely go for a smaller sub in this room, if you can. Now, that SB2000s would be even better, but buy one at a time, I suppose. No, these clips just are really. They are not. They say SW on the back, but it should just say W, because they're basically a woofer. They are not a subwoofer in any sense of the word. So
Yeah, I mean, if he had been asking about the sub 1500, it would have been the same answer that we gave Christian last week,
right.
which is that, I mean, the sub 1500 we think is a terrific value.
Yeah.
$200 for a sub that can legitimately play down to about 23 hertz. That's a fantastic value, but it does basically drop off a cliff below 23 hertz, and it's actually physically bigger than the PB1000. So we probably wouldn't really point you that way. It would give us pause to do that, although the price savings are certainly there. And there is Dayton's sub 1200, which gets 25 hertz ish extension, but it's only $150 each, so you
Right.
can't complain too much about that. Now, you might consider, say, HSU's VTF1, right? Which is less expensive. You're down in the $400 price range, so not as big a savings as this clip show the Dayton's, but a little bit less money. But HSU very, very honest in their ratings, and being one of these variable tuning frequency ones that they have. If you leave both ports open, then they're like, yeah, this is a 32 hertz sub, just like the clips. But if you plug one of those ports and flip the switch to give it deeper extension but less output, then it's pretty flat down to about 22 hertz. Still not right down to 20. I mean, that's what you're paying the extra money for in the PB1000, is to get right down to 20 hertz.
Yeah.
So you have to weigh that. How valuable is that versus the money you're spending? Because I can totally understand saying, $1,000, $950, that's a lot of money, and it is a lot of money.
Yeah, I do too. And I mean, I don't care if you go for if you've already bought them and you're like,
Right.
I think they sound great. I
Right.
don't care because and you like them and you're enjoying them. That's great. You're asking us, why should you spend the extra money, or is it worth the extra money? To us, it is.
Right.
To us, it is.
And that's from
there are
experience of having gone through all the stages until we got subwoofers that can really hit that 20 hertz. And we're like, oh, I've been missing that this whole time. And now that I have it, I don't want to give it up.
That's right. So Bobby has resigned himself to a 92-inch screen size, but can't help wishing he could accommodate a larger 106-inch screen. With his room only being 12 feet long, most projectors simply cannot throw an image that size from that close. Are there any lower-priced 4K projectors with a short enough throw and a small enough chassis to fit within the length of his room and throw of a 106 inch image? Are you sure that you want 106? Before we go through the whole process of finding you a projector, a lot of times we get into this number game of like, oh wow, this one being a little bit bigger, and blah blah blah. What do you actually prefer in the image? Because this is something that's so easy to test, and people have very strong feelings about. Like, if you get too big of a screen, you are going to hate it. You're not going to be like,
a lot of like, if you're having to move your eyes all the time, or even worse, having to actually turn your head to see the sides of your screen. I don't like doing that.
My kids watch
leave
these
my head alone and
Minecraft videos all the time, and the guy he's fidgety.
Mm.
So when he's when he's talking with his friends while they're all playing Minecraft, making jokes, which is part of why my kids watch it, he just sort of like turns his character around and has them jump and has them just kind of like kind of go back and forth, and I'm like, because it's all first person, and I'm about ready to puke all over my home theater. It is so bad. It's disorienting, and it makes you nauseated, or feel nauseated, and you may end up in that experience if you get a screen that's too big. So before you decide, hey, I really do want this 106-inch screen, what is your actual preferred a ratio to, and we've talked about this before. You go to a movie theater,
Mm-hmm.
you sit in a seat that you like, when there's a nice bright scene on, you count the number of tiles on the ceiling, if there are tiles on the ceiling,
And there often are.
Between you and the screen, and you count the number of tiles from one side of the screen to the other. And then that's what you like. That's your ratio for the bottom of the screen, not the diagonal, not the 106 diagonal, but the bottom of the screen,
the width
and the distance from your eyes to the screen. That's what you want to know. Count that. If it ends up being close to 106 inches or over 106 inches, within 106 inches for you. If it ends up being around 82, then you get that 106 and you're going to hate. So make sure you do that test before you decide, hey, I'm definitely getting this 106-inch screen.
But let's say he does, and he just wants a projector that can throw a bigger image when the entire length of his room is only 12 feet.
Right.
And he's like, he'd like to get a 4K if he could, but budget is a concern. So he's like, what are some in the lower price ranges? So I don't know his exact budget, but regardless, I'm going to point you to an Optima, because they're the ones that have slightly shorter throws. So the one that will for sure be able to throw a 106-inch image, given the length of his room, is their least expensive one, the Optima UHD 50. You can find it for about $1,350. Retail price is $1,500, but you can find it all over the place for about $1,350. So it's one of the least expensive. That is the one that uses a 1080p resolution panel, but it wobbles it 4 times per frame to give you the full 8 million pixels per frame of 4K resolution. Now, it's HDR compatible, but HDR really doesn't look any different from SDR in terms of the contrast or the light output. It is using the RGB cyan yellow color wheel, so it really does not have the wide color. So it's compatible with the HDR signals and that, but it really doesn't show them to you. And it doesn't have the greatest black levels, and all of that is what makes it the least expensive one, but it can certainly fit and give you the largest screen size. It's got the shortest throw of these. Now, the next two I'm going to mention, they just barely fit. So the body of the chassis is 13 inches from front to back, and then we're worried about how far is the lens to the screen. So assuming the screen is flush on your front wall, the UHD 60 and the UHD 65, both from Optima, they need 10 feet 9 inches from lens to screen to throw a 106-inch diagonal 16 by 9 image.
They have to have like a right angle HDMI cables back there.
Because you're talking about 2 inches to spare. But theoretically, it'll fit. It might be very, very snug. But I mean, you're right. Very few other projectors will. So the UHD 60 goes for about $1,700. It's very much comparable to Epson's Home Cinema 4000, except for the Home Cinema 4000 has like a powered zoom lens and all that stuff, lens memories. The UHD 60 doesn't have any of that. It has a little bit of manual vertical lens shift and nothing else. So not as easy to set up. But in terms of black levels, similar. In terms of how it performs with HDR, similar. But the UHD 60 does not have the wide color. It is also using the RGB CY color wheel, and it doesn't really have the wide color. The UHD 65 does have the wider color. They're using an RGB, a red, green, blue, 6-segment color wheel, but it's $2,300, meaning it's competing more with Epson's Home Cinema 5040 UB, and it doesn't get quite as black, and it doesn't get quite as wide color as the Epson, but it does give you this throw range on the smaller chassis that might work. But $2,300, I'm thinking, is probably more than he wanted to spend, but that is the one that gives you the nicer HDR and the better black levels and the wider colors. So yeah, all Optimas, pick your poison.
Yeah. Nick, Nick is still using his Pioneer Kuro plasma TV. Got his money's worth out of that thing. But he's feeling the urge to upgrade to a 4K HDR display with full DCI P3 color. He's in the basement with total light control. He can make it pitch black if he wants to, but he finds pitch blackness a bit fatiguing when watching his Kuro, so he uses some bias lighting, a single 40-watt incandescent lamp at the moment, though he's considering stepping that down to 25-watt bulbs as he thinks he might be missing a tiny bit of shadow detail with the 40-watt light.
You can tell what sort of viewer Nick is.
Yeah.
Just from
Why
that
doesn't he get like the bias? Is the bias light behind the TV, or is he just having?
I'm not
like,
exactly sure where the placement. He just talked about the incandescent bulb he's using.
It kind of sounds like he should be putting that like behind the TV so that it's
or if it is already, maybe just put a shade over the 40 watt that you're already using. Yep.
So the big question, OLED or flagship LCD with full array local dimming? Since he likes to use a bias light, will the perfect black levels of an OLED even be noticeable? Dude, I'm going to just straight up tell you right now, this dude is never going to be happy with an LCD.
Nope.
There's just zero chance. The question, it answers itself. Yeah. I have a Kuro. Will I even really notice those tiny little differences? The fact that you're even worried about the tiny little black levels means that you are gonna hate an LCD. Anytime it does anything weird, you're gonna be like, "Oh."
I mean, the number one thing I know is gonna bug you, Nick, if you went LCD, is you're gonna be watching movies on this thing. A lot of those movies have black bars, and even on the Z9D, even on the Q9FN. Those black bars, they don't stay completely black all the time. There's a little bit of that. If you've got a bright object that's right up close to the black bar, bleeds into that black bar a little bit. The OLED, those black bars are as black as the bezel. You cannot tell the difference between the screen and the bezel, and they stay that way. I'm like, that alone is enough for me to know Nick wants an OLED.
Yeah. I think that the rest of the question isn't even worth reading, to be honest with you, because it's there's just no way this guy's going to be happy with an LCD. This
is a pretty cut and dry. I will just, this is the warning I'm giving everybody. Be aware. The LCDs have this too, but that little bit of vertical banding that you can see in the dark grays, they're all going to have some of it. You can't escape it entirely. It's inherent to the panels, but the LCDs have it too, and the LCDs often have some banding or dirty screen effect in the bright grays, which I actually think is even worse, because that you see more often in content. But get it home, put on a 10% gray. You can just do it on YouTube, or you can actually use the internal test pattern in its white balance setting in the LG OLEDs. You can go in there and turn on its internal test pattern, and you can step all the way through from a 5% gray all the way up to 100% gray. But go by your first blush impression. If you're like, this is pretty good, yes, if I examine it, I can see some vertical banding, but when my first blush is, that's pretty good. If you right away are like, hey, there's like 2 or 3 obvious bands, send that one back, exchange it. You got one of the 20% that isn't so great. Get one of the 80% that's pretty darn good, and that'll keep you happy.
So he doesn't necessarily mind paying the higher price for an OLED or a flagship LCD, but the 75-inch 2018, okay, he's not going to want that. Vizio P series available for $2,100, which seems like a tempting combination of size and price. Can we convince him that a 65-inch OLED would be a better choice? Or that waiting and hoping on the price of a 77-inch OLED comes down to maybe $5,000 or $6,000 as a viable option. Let me tell you, how much is your time worth? Because you're gonna unbox this thing, you're gonna set it up, and then you're gonna put it back in the box, and you're gonna take it back to the store. So all of that time, how much is that time worth? I mean, because you're not gonna want to keep it.
For the majority of people, I completely agree. A 75-inch. Really good 4K HDR LCD for $2,100. I'm like, that is a compelling combination of price and size. But for Nick, nope, it's not. I'm sorry, Nick, it's not. You're gonna say it. Tom's
you're right, a videophile, and it's fine. Okay, but let's just call a spade and say you, sir, are only going to be happy if you have something that is at least comparable in performance to your Kuro, and LCD ain't it. So
now the 77-inch OLED, so they're $9,000 right now. The C8 77-incher, $9,000, might $6,000 when the replacement is coming out next year.
Yeah,
maybe $5,000, kind of iffy. But I mean, we've seen what used to be. So they used to have the G7 and the W7, right? The wallpaper one. Those used to be the ones that had 77-inch sizes available, and we saw those go from $15,000 down to $10,000. Now, I don't think you're going to see the same $5,000 drop, but we might see the similar percentage of about a third of the price. So $6,000, not out of the question, but you would have to wait for that. But the alternative is, if you're wall mounting it, you get one of those articulating mounts, and you just kind of pull that 65-incher a bit closer to you, or you nudge your seats a bit closer to the 65-incher, and you can enjoy it right now.
Yeah. Mike is a fairly new listener. This is this guy with all the questions, right?
It
is. Okay. Yeah. All right. He's going to do his whole thing right now. Mike's a fairly new listener. A friend turned him onto the podcast. Now he's hoping we can help him finalize some of his dedicated basement theater plans. The finished room will be fully enclosed, light controlled, and soundproofed. He's been working with Ted White from the Soundproofing Company, and the primary concern is preventing sound from getting upstairs. A little bit of sound leak into the rest of the basement would be okay, but not if it leaks upstairs. Well, you can't tell it to stay downstairs. It's not like your kids. The room will be 20 feet long, 13 feet 3 inches wide, and the finished ceiling would be 8 feet 6 inches high. That's pretty big for a basement.
Mm-hmm.
And then there will be soffits in a grid pattern below the finished ceiling, which will conceal a structural beam, the ducting for the dead air vent exchange system, and the theater sliding and Atmos speakers. So that's probably the 6 inches. So the finished
well, the beam, he said, so the beam itself isn't a foot deep, but the soffit that will go around it will end up being about a foot. So the bottoms of these soffits will be about 7. I think he said 7 feet 7 inches, right? So they're like 11 inches from the finished ceiling to the bottom of these soffits. But he's putting in this sort of grid pattern on his ceiling.
So it's like it's not a drop ceiling, but it's sort of like a drop ceiling.
Oh, no, these are soffits. So look up at your ceiling and you would see a grid. So the soffit part of them will be at 7 feet 7 inches, and then the ceiling above that will be 8 feet 6. But the point is, it's a continuous ceiling at that 8 feet 6, and then all of the stuff for the room is concealed within these soffits below that finished ceiling. So that's the soundproofing part of it, right? He's able to put all of his pot lights, his in-ceiling Atmos speakers, his ductwork and everything is within this already enclosed finished room, and then just covering that with soffits, which that's what you want to do if you want maximum soundproofing.
So clearly, Ted White has had a large influence on the soundproofing plans. He's closing off this room from a larger section of his basement, so any pre-existing walls will have sound clips and hat channels added to the existing studs, and he has planned for a double stud wall with double airlock style doors for the new partition wall. A dry wall, all dry wall will be double with green glue in between. For some reason, his wife really does not like that airlock style 2 doors idea. So he could start by installing a single solid core door, and if they discover that's not enough, they could add the second door later? The double stud wall will have a doorway opening in it either way, so the framing for the second door could already be there if needed. So what are our thoughts on that? I mean, you could always get like a super duper cheap door to begin with, and then when there's all kind of sound coming through that door and then up the stairs, and your wife's like, "Oh, it's so loud." Then you're like, "Okay, honey, well, I told you, so let's go get the other door," and then get 2 good doors this time.
I'm so tempted to just say. I mean, so
the double door is so weird. It's just weird. I agree with his wife. It's weird. Just get like one big heavy door, I
guess. I mean, what Ted White recommends, a lot of people would consider overkill, and I can see where they're coming from. But at the same time, what he recommends will work.
Right. Well, right? I mean, I understand that, and I think he does too. But it's weird. Okay, it is weird.
So you open one door and there's another door right there.
There's another door there.
It's like the guy who takes off the sunglasses and another pair of sunglasses underneath.
It's just odd. I agree with his wife here. I do. I think it's weird. I think you get. This is what I say you do. You make like a little, like the little, bigger frame. Like, do not put the framing for the second door in yet.
Okay.
Just do the first door, and it just has a thicker frame for some reason. I've got because this room that I'm in right now, they added a bathroom. They added this onto the house, which was right behind the garage, and they added a bath, took part of the garage space and made a bathroom there. So the wall that is between me and the bathroom, where I'm currently sitting, is actually cinder blocks.
Okay.
So it's huge. So I have this 6-inch, 7-inch framing.
Right. Okay.
That I have to walk through to get to my bathroom door. No one has ever said to me, "Why is this like this?" But if they opened that door and they saw another door,
And there's
they'd
another
look
door.
at they would look at me like I'd lost my damn mind.
Plus, you'd have acoustic insulation on that door to make sure that any echoes that
Right.
were between the two doors get damped.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
that's what you'd want to do. Yeah, I know it looks weird, but
I'll tell you what. If can you get Ted White to agree to like a pocket door for one of these doors, so that like the door on the on the inside or something like that, that you can somehow hide it and it stays away most of the time, and then just when you're watching a movie, you slide that one closed. I mean, I don't know, dude. It's just weird.
Honestly, my instinct is like just bite the bullet and put in the double doors, and you'll get used to it. You'll get used to it before long at all. But I can.
I don't agree.
I don't know. I can't lie. I'm sorry. I can't lie. I would just do the double door. You're gonna build the whole double drive, the double studs and everything already. And if you do end up needing the second door later, that means taking down a bit of the thing so you can put in the casing for the door instead. It's a whole deal, and you're going to be stuck with the one door, and then a bit of sound's going to leak into the rest of your basement. It's going to get in your ducts, and it's going to bother your wife upstairs. I'm like, just put in the 2 doors. You're done. I don't know. Sorry, man. We disagree. We can see why you and your wife would disagree. We're no help on this one.
I'm the wife, apparently, in this argument. I get to be the wife.
And I'm the guy with 2 pairs of sunglasses on.
There you go. The plan is to have the first row of seats 12 feet back, from the front wall, and the second row of seats 2.5 feet from the back wall. With his 12-foot viewing distance, he'd really like to have a 135-inch screen for a nearly 45-degree field of view. But that screen size would only leave him only 1.5 feet on either side. So does that force his front, left, and right speakers to be too close to the side walls? So you just lay out the distances for someone's 20-foot long theater. Would 11 feet from the 120-inch screen be a better choice? He hadn't really considered how much space is behind the second row, since he's much more concerned about where this first row would be sitting. Okay, so he wants to be about 12 feet, which is fine. It's 20-foot long room. 12 feet is perfectly fine.
Yep.
A foot and a half on either side is really, really tight.
It's snug. It's not like undoable. That's okay. It's just
you can
snug.
bring your speakers into the room that'll change the angles so that you can cheat them in a little bit, and they won't be hit by the projector.
Yeah.
But you will be awfully close to the side walls. Now,
you put some absorption on those side walls, and it mitigates largely the acoustic problems.
But sometimes imaging becomes an issue and some other things. So there's a couple of solutions here. Smaller screen, which then you can move your front row of seats from 12 feet away to like
11 feet away.
Well, 11. Or, I mean, if you really wanted to do this, you could actually, because you don't want to be in the midpoint of the room.
No.
So you could go a little bit in front of the midpoint of the room, then your screen can be quite small for that first row, and your second row could be at 12 or 13 feet. And then you got all this space,
whole bunch of space behind you. That seems like a waste.
Yeah, which seems like a waste, but so put the third row in there. Who knows? But or you can use in-wall speakers, or build a false wall. Then that moves any. If you use in-wall speakers, you can have the whole front of the room be a screen if you wanted it to be, and then acoustically transparent screen,
which are actually some of his questions coming up.
Yeah, I know. You could do that, or the problem, and this is what we're going to come up to when we do come up with those. If you do build a false wall, then you're cutting off some of your space, which means your screen is going to be even closer to you, which means your screen size will then be even smaller.
That's right. Yeah.
So one of the other options you can consider here is this: not having a fixed frame screen.
Oh.
Just get a motorized drop screen that comes from the ceiling, about 2 feet, 3 feet, 2 feet into the room. Then you get the same
field of
viewing angle with a smaller screen size, and you just have speakers. You walk into the room, you see chairs, and you see speakers. And people are like, "Where's the screen?" And you go press a button, and your screen comes down, which would be awesome. Hide it in the soffit, even better. They'll be like, "This is the sexiest thing I've ever seen."
I mean, but again, my inclination is, I mean, I laid out this 20-foot long theater for someone else, and I was like, yeah, I would sit 11 feet from the front wall, I'd use a 120-inch screen at that point. That gives you the 44-degree field of view, very similar. Then the second row seats can be 6 feet behind that at 17 feet, leaving you 3 feet behind the second row, which is nice acoustically because then they're not right up against the surround back speakers. And I'm like, to me, that all just works. You are a little bit behind the midpoint of the room, so acoustically, that's okay for that front row. And the 120-inch screen is easier to light up. He wants a 4K HDR projector. The slightly smaller screen means you can reach the full 100 nits. Like, it all just works. The math all just works out. And I'm like, I understand but 135, it sounds like such an enticing size, but I'm like, it's the end experience that counts. And now you're not worried about your speakers being too close to side walls. You've still got the field of view. You've got better acoustics for your back row, even though you don't care about that as much. Like, it all works out, and it's less expensive. So what's not to like? I don't.
So yes, should he consider going with the even larger screen, but making it acoustically transparent so all of 3 of his front speakers can go behind that screen? Well, the downside, and the real major downside that you should consider here is that you're now looking at a projector that has to be able to put out enough light to get that screen lit up. The bigger you get, the harder that is to do. 120, most projectors are built out of the box to do 120 fairly handily. That is sort of the sweet spot there. So going much bigger than that, 136, 150, you're looking at having to pay more for a specialized
That's like
projector.
high lamp mode to get SDR.
Yeah.
Right. For at 150. Yeah. And plus, if you went acoustically transparent, either you're now going in wall speakers for your front speakers, or you're building a false wall, which means the screen is physically closer to you. So you wouldn't go larger.
Right. You go smaller.
You probably go smaller. Exactly. Because the screen has now moved closer to you.
Is honestly is a very good, that I like better than.
Right. I mean, that's similar to use a motorized one that's mounted a little bit physically closer to you. So then it's smaller and your speakers are away from the side walls again. Yeah.
It's smaller, but I like the idea of the false wall. You bring everything into a room, you can get a nice, perfect screen size that's fixed frame, acoustically transparent. You can put your speakers wherever the heck you want up there. You can change your speakers out whenever you want. It gives you a lot more flexibility. It's a little bit more expensive in the construction part of it.
Yep.
But
the acoustically transparent screen is a bit more expensive than just a white screen.
But in the end, you'll end up, I think, having a lot. It gives you a nice, clean look.
It does do that. Yeah, I can't deny that. But there's something about the distance from the screen thing, though. Now you're talking about being 9.5 feet away from your screen instead of 11 or 12.
Right.
And it starts feeling like, I'm almost within flat panel territory now. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know. It's tricky. If you had a considerably larger room, I'd be all for a false wall. But with 20 feet, I'm like, 20 feet in 2 rows, I like the 120-inch screen on the front wall, and then you just sit a little bit closer to it. Yeah.
Almost all of his money is going to the construction of the room, so he was planning to go with a silver ticket screen in order to keep the budget under control. If he does go with acoustically transparent, is a silver ticket woven screen still a good choice? Isn't it like we said, 12 feet is 10 feet?
Yeah, you want to be about 12 feet away from it to not pretty much like never see the weave.
Guaranteed not to see the weave.
And you're right in the somewhat questionable zone. Yeah. You're going to be 11 or 12, maybe. If you go acoustically transparent with a false wall, you're maybe in the 10 or 9.5 foot range. Right. At which point I'm like, I kind of want that Seymour UHD fabric with the really tight weave. Way more money.
All right. So apparently he has only recently been turned on this podcast because he doesn't know that fight he's about to start, but here it goes. He had it in mind to go with a 6:9 aspect ratio screen, 16:9, sorry. But he isn't opposed to a 2.35:1 screen instead. Maybe a wider, acoustically transparent 2.35:1 screen would look best. What do we think? Rob's going to say both, and I don't. It's 16:9. It's 16:9. That's what you want because you want it to, you don't want to have black bars on the sides when you watch your 16:9 stuff. It's going to make, if you got the correct size, 2.35:1, then your regular movies are going to be tiny.
Well, like regular TV is going to be tiny.
Well
smaller. I wouldn't say tiny. It's going to be smaller. The way it should be, your movie should be wider than your TV. Yeah, but
No,
no,
that's not true. It's not
why?
true.
Why would your television be larger than your CinemaScope movies?
It doesn't matter.
that
You're
does-
sitting in a room. You should have it as big as possible at all times. You don't make things purposely smaller. That's ridiculous.
Television should be smaller than CinemaScope, ideally. But the problem here is that something has to be masked or have black bars. Something does, right? You go with the 2.35 to 1 screen, then everything you watch that's 1.85 to 1 or 16 by 9 leaves blank on the sides of your screen. How are you going to deal with that? There are ways to deal with that. You could get a Seymour AV screen with masking panels that you stick up there with magnets. You could pay a whole boatload for motorized masking that comes in from the sides, or you could have motorized curtains that you use, but then you wouldn't want to put all your speakers behind all of that because the curtains are going to come in sometimes and block your front, left, right. It opens up all these issues. You have to deal with that blank space on the sides of your screen somehow. Whereas if you go the 16 by 9 screen, when you're watching CinemaScope, well, yeah, you'll have black bars above and below, but with the projector that he wants to get, those black bars are really black. Mm-hmm. And I mean, if you want to do masking, again, you have those options. You can get motorized masking or the magnet type of masking if you go Seymour AV. But honestly, with the projector he wants on one of these JVCs, the black bars are going to be really black. I'm in favor of going to 16 by 9. Now your IMAX looks bigger than your CinemaScope, and you're not dealing with masking.
Right. So you're strongly leaning towards a JVC X790 projector. Where would you recommend mounting it, keeping in mind that the ceiling support beam cannot be moved, so the usable height of the ceiling is only the bottom of that beam, about 7.5 feet. Any particular projector mounts we'd recommend? Most of the time we recommend projector mounts from Monoprice because they're cheap and they work.
For a JVC, though, those are big and heavy.
Are they?
Mm-hmm.
But just if for future reference, whenever you're, other people, like, oh, I should ask them what I should do. Projector Central has a calculator. You put your screen size and the projector you want, and they'll tell you where you can mount it. What's the available range?
And since the JVCs have tons of zoom range and tons of lens shift range, I would suggest you put this on a shelf on your back wall.
Yeah, that's easy.
I would totally suggest that you don't have to worry about a mount at that point. You don't even have to put the thing upside down. It's got enough lens shift. It can be right side up, high up on a shelf on your back wall, and still completely fill your screen. It's got tons of lens shift and tons of zoom range. And the lens of the thing, so it's over a foot from front to back. It's like almost 1.5 feet from front to back. So even at the back of your room, it's going to be like 18.5 feet, or actually probably a little less than 18.5 feet from the lens to the screen. Totally within the zoom range for either size. You could do 120 or 135, whatever you decide to do, and that's with the screen on your front wall. But if you go with the 120-inch size and you have it that far back, it still can get you to the full HDR 30-foot Lamberts, 31, 32-foot Lamberts. It all works really nicely. And having it on that back wall, now you're never worrying about it being directly overhead. It's kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Yep.
I like that.
So again, he's got not a ton of money in the budget for new gear. So while he plans to upgrade his speakers eventually, for the time being, he'd like to use what he already owns. He's got a Denon X6400H receiver that can power 11 speakers all on its own. It runs hot though, so that has him a little bit concerned. Should be okay though, right? Yeah, it should be okay. I mean, if you're really that concerned, then get a cheap-ish 2-channel amp to take the load of your front 2 speakers.
Sure. Yeah.
That will do the most to dissipate the that heat that's coming off there is from the amps being used, and your front, left, and right speakers get the most usage.
Mm-hmm.
So you could buy a 2-channel amp, and that would extend the life of your receiver if that's if you're really worried about the heat.
And if it's running hot like that, I would just double check that the video processing in the X6400 is actually turned completely off, because those video processing chips actually get really hot.
Really hot. Those are the ones that can sometimes give you the biggest problems. So yeah. So he has one SVS SB2000 subwoofer already. He was thinking he'd just add a second SB2000. He talked with SVS, and they said there's approximately 2,200 cubic feet. The sealed sub should be fine, although the ported models could work too. Is he going to regret sticking with sealed subs? Should he stretch the budget to get the dual PB2000s instead? No.
Yeah, 2,200 cubic feet, and these are SB2000s, not SB1000s.
Yeah.
Dual SB2000s in 2200 cubic feet. I'm like, you're good to go.
Yeah,
You're good to go.
I'll be honest with you, I don't even think you're going to notice that big of a performance jump if you went to the PB2000s. I mean, they do hit lower, but I don't know that you're going to notice. It's all subsonic anyways. So I don't know how much you're going to actually notice of the difference. So I would just definitely save the money. Keep what you've got. Buy its brother or sister or whatever it is. And then you're off to the races.
Easier to place, too. Physically smaller.
Yeah. And space is, I know feel like you have a lot of it, but it's still at a premium in these situations. So for the Atmos speakers, he already has 4 Sonos 6.5-inch in-ceiling speakers that he plans to install in the soffits on the theater ceiling. He used them in a previous room as an all-in ceiling 5.1 setup that he thought sounded not that bad. So he's not really all that excited about them, but they'd be fine for Atmos, right? Yep.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Yep. Atmos.
Definitely.
Yep. Yes.
Done.
Atmos.
Nice that you have soffits to put them in, too.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
He likes SVS's speakers, and he plans to upgrade to them eventually. But for now, he'll use the Boston Acoustics VR2 and VRC that he owns as his LCRs. For surrounds, for left, center, right is what LCR stands for. For surround speaker, he already owns some ELAC Debut B6 bookshelf speakers, but he's found that they're quite directional. And while they have a nice sound on their own, they really don't match his Boston Acoustics. While ELAC speakers are just sitting in the box right now, so should he install them or should he sell them now and get right now and get SVS bookshelf speakers as his surrounds and surround backs, since he wants to end up with SVS speakers in the end anyways? Why do you want to end up with SVS? I mean, I like SVS speakers.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. And I don't think they're a bad choice. But are you just liking them because you like their subs? Because I don't know that you have some experience with SVS speakers that you haven't.
I mean, he said in his email clearly that he likes their speakers and he knows which SVS speakers he wants to get. And I have no reason to tell you to go away from that because they're good speakers. So
the ELAC speakers are quite directional.
Yeah, that's what he found. It's not impossible. They do have a wave guide on that tweeter. So.
I know. But I'm wondering what situation he used these things. If he had an all-in ceiling 5.1 system and added
he
ELACs,
was saying this was more like a near field type of setup that he was using the ELACs in.
I don't know. If it were me, because, I mean, SVS doesn't have on-walls, right? Or in-wall speakers?
Other than the Prime satellites and Prime elevations, they don't really have on-walls, no.
I would go ahead and just try these ELACs, to be honest with you, because the wiring is not going to be in the mounting is not going to be that much different than whatever he's going to get.
Yeah, I mean the B6s are the larger of the bookshelf ELAC models, so you probably want to get the wall mounts that have the side clamping type of thing, because they don't really have like a wall mount screw for them or anything like that built in. So you'd want to get like the side clamping ones, which those side clamping mounts will work just as well for any of the SVS bookshelf speakers.
So what you end up doing in the end here is just setting up the ELACs, living with them for a little bit. And then if you're like, nah, hate them, then you go ahead and order the SVSs.
Yeah. And if you go with those side clamping mounts, it won't be a difficult swap out.
Right. It's just the speaker cable and the, that's my suggestion.
Okay.
Well, is that also your suggestion?
I'm in agreement. Yes.
Okay. Again, for someone else's 20-foot theater, we suggested 2 pairs of side surround speakers so that each row of seats has its own pair of side surrounds. But wouldn't having 2 speakers on each side sort of mess up the experience? Yeah, that's why we suggested it, because we like messing stuff up so much. Nah, it'll be fine.
Go to any commercial movie theater
and look
lots of side surround
there's speakers all over the place. Yeah. It's supposed to be diffused. So he's much less concerned about the back row, and there are also bulkheads towards the back of the room to house his dead vet system to serve as an equipment closet. So he'd probably have to use in-wall speakers if he wants to give the back row its own side surrounds. Is it okay to just have 1 pair of surrounds? That was his plan all along, and he's still leaning towards that. Yeah, I don't care.
I mean, if your back row is for the occasional time that you have that many people and you are always in the front row, 1 pair of side surrounds is absolutely fine.
I have 2 rows of seats, and my second row of seat is it's not even a row. It is a love seat. And a single chair off to the side. I forgot about that one, because did I get rid of that? I need to get rid of that. Anyhow, there's like a little love seat back there that now that we have a 5-seater couch that we can all sit on, no one ever uses it. In fact, my son, my 15-year-old, he's 15 now. My 15-year-old son will sometimes try to go back there so that he can be by himself and not be with the family. We're like, nah, you got to be up here with us. We're all sitting together. So, and I'll tell you, the back row gets terrible surround experience.
There you go.
It's awful. But who cares? No one sits back there anyways.
And yours won't be awful. We're leaving you some space behind that second row. So it won't be awful. It just won't be optimal. Yeah. But yeah, that's fine. Totally fine to do what you want to do there.
So it'll be a 7.2.4 setup, but should he run wires for any other speaker positions just in case he wants to use them in the future?
If these soffits are not going to be easy to open, like you actually have to put holes in them to run more wires, go ahead. Yeah. Wire for all 10 overhead possible positions, because speaker wire does not have to be expensive. Wire for front wides. Why the heck not? Wire for 3 pairs of side surrounds on each side. Why the heck not? Because you're building a soundproof room and you do not want to punch holes in these walls in the future. Anything that even crosses your mind as a possibility for speaker wire, since speaker wire is not expensive, go ahead and run that before the walls are finished. Yeah.
So he's going to have his AV rack in a bulkhead nook towards the back of the room. But he wants to keep his Xbox One X more accessible, so he's got a second space closer to his seat for any source devices that use physical media. The layout means he'll need a long HDMI run going from those physical media sources back to his AV rack, and a second long HDMI run going from his AV rack back to his projector. Since it will all be running overhead in the soffits, he figured on a 50-foot length for each HDMI run. He's used an HDMI to Ethernet adapter before with good results, but that was with for 1080p. He knows he could run conduit, but running Cat 6 would be a lot easier and cheaper for him. So is there a good 4K Ethernet solution? And what do we think? What do we think he should use? I think you should put all of your gear right next to each other. That's what I think. I think that this is a very silly problem that you have created for yourself. That's what I think.
I see where he's coming. I mean, this is a like a theater. He's like building a theater.
Right.
So ideas in mind. I want to make them happen. You can make them happen. Tom has a point in that if you're willing to change some plans, there might be a way to avoid at least one of these. You're going to need the one long run from the AV rack up to the projector, though. That's going to happen.
Yeah, but it's at the back of the room, right? Yeah. And you said put the projector
on a shelf.
On the shelf at the back of the room. So he's now got one HDMI cable.
Yeah, what if there were one cable visible
6 foot long?
That you're... Unless you're turning around from your front row to look at the back row all the time.
Even that. I mean, there's one 6-foot cable that you have to run in a wall.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a non-issue. And honestly, how often are you switching discs? I mean, are you switching discs like all the time?
Maybe.
Not if you're watching movies. Not if it's a theater. You gonna watch a 2-hour movie and then you're gonna go switch a disc. And you know what happens when you switch a disc? Everybody leaves to go to the bathroom. See? No one sees what you do back there.
All right, so that can be our number one, but let's just answer as asked. Is there a solution in case he needs the long run? So there is an HD base T solution. That's the thing that turns HDMI into Ethernet.
Yeah.
In fact, Emotiva is now offering one for $400. That is the full 18 gigabits per second, fully tested for HDCP 2.2 and all the HDMI 2.0 features. So $400 is the package that gives you the one that turns the original HDMI into Ethernet and then turns the Ethernet back into HDMI at your projector. So it certainly can be done. And yes, the Cat 6 cabling is cheap, but let's say it is even 50 feet. If you want one that we know is going to be guaranteed to work, Blue Jeans Cable is now selling active HDMI cables. Their 50-foot length is $85. So, I mean, with the Emotiva solution, if you needed 2 50-foot runs, you'd need 2 of those $400 converters. That's $800 to get this 100 feet of HDMI cable run, or 85 times 2, $170 for active HDMI cables.
But he doesn't need 2 anyways. He just needs 1.
But he might. If he does exactly what he's saying, he's thinking he'll need 2 50-foot runs.
Why would he need 2? Because I thought one of it was...
The one to go from the sources, up the wall, through the soffits, over to his AV rack, and then the one to go from his AV rack over to his projector.
Yeah, but his projector is going to be right overhead. It's not going to be 50 feet.
I don't know. I'm just answering it in case it is. In case it is.
It's not going to be 50 feet. It's going to be like 10 at max. It's a 7-foot high room. Where is he going to do with the other
Yeah, I'm sure he was thinking
cable.
ceiling mount before, and I'm not sure why it would need to be 50 feet from somewhere towards the back of the room
Go
to the
all the way
projector.
around the whole room and back again, man.
Maybe, I don't know, maybe the way the like where there's actually holes in these soffits, that's just, I don't know. I'm answering as is. I'm just saying could use active HDMI.
Yes.
Monoprice does have their dynamic view HDMI cables. Their 50-foot length is only $65, but not a big difference between them and Blue Jeans. Both of those should work, but he is thinking, okay, in the future, there might be HDMI 2.1. We might have the 48 gigabits per second. Active HDMI cables would need to be changed wholesale in order to make that work. And
which
then
is
you're like,
great
okay.
because your projector is going to be directly above your gear, which means that if you do have to switch out cables, it's not going to be a long run.
Yeah.
And it'll be, and you have a greater chance of your current cable being okay with the next thing that comes out.
But if it's active, it won't be. Because active all depends on the chipsets, and the bandwidth can't go any higher. So it would be conduit that you'd want to use with any of the active HDMI cable solutions. But we have no idea what kind of Ethernet you might need for 48 gigabits per second. That might be 4 Cat7 cables that you need to run to carry that. Right. We don't know. So, I mean, if you want to go insanely overboard on wiring your Ethernet ahead of time, I guess you could do that, but it's still $400 per HD base T converter or a converter pair.
Yeah.
So I'm in favor of going with the active HDMI cables and running them in conduit. That's what I'd do.
Yeah, I'd go with okay.
Moving everything closer so you don't even need active HDMI to begin with. That's Tom's solution.
That's my suggestion.
That's right.
What do we suggest for controlling all of this? You'd like to be able to control things from outside the room as possible. The Harmony remotes are the answer, unless you want to go with something, custom.
Well, first of all, the Denon you could control directly with Denon's smartphone app.
Yeah.
So as long as you have your Denon connected to your network, your home network, and then your smartphone connected to that same home network, you could control the AV receiver directly with the Denon, excuse me, the Denon app. But yeah, the Harmony Hub can also connect to your network and can be controlled by the Harmony app for your smartphone.
Right.
So you can control everything via your network. Now, if you're building these super thick double stud, double drywall, clip and hat channel walls, there's a chance that your wireless Wi-Fi router might not penetrate all of that with the strongest signal.
I wouldn't think so. You better run Ethernet from your router.
Run some Ethernet from your main router into that room, and then you can have a bridge, right? You can have a wireless bridge inside. Now you can plug the Harmony Hub and your AV receiver right into that bridge, which is then hardwired to your main router. Then anywhere that you can access.
Anyways, though, if you're going to be doing any streaming at all.
Oh, yeah. And we know he's good with running Ethernet.
Apparently, it's his favorite cable.
So yeah, just make sure you got a bridge inside of your theater, connect everything to that. Now everything's on the network. Harmony Hub is and the Harmony app on your smartphone can do this from any room that you can connect to your network from.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I did say that you could go with something more high end or whatever, but it involves a custom installer, and that's going to be a lot more money. Now, the upside to all that is that you're going to get it's going to be a lot more expensive, but you're going to get very precise control of everything, and customization options up the wazoo. They're going to be able to help you wire your lights all up and have everything working together. They'll have custom little icons for on whatever touchscreen thingy they give you or app they give you, but it's really not necessary because the Harmony Hub is ridiculously powerful. I mean, this thing right here, right now, it does most of what people were paying tens of thousands of dollars for 10 years ago.
And the Hub has 2 extender outputs.
Right.
So it comes with 2 little mini IR blasters. So like if you have this second place where your physical media sources are separate from the rest of your AV rack, you can just run a simple mono 3.5 millimeter extension cable that plugs into the Hub and then extends one of these mini IR blasters to reach over to those other sources. You can totally do it all with the Harmony Hub.
I know we're kind of done with this guy's question, but one thing I wanted to say is I'm kind of, I guess, kind of concerned, but I'm kind of curious as to why he's decided to keep all of his gear in the room with him. Because it seems to me now.
Well, he said there's kind of a convenient place because the way the house was built, there's like a fireplace upstairs, but not downstairs. But there's still like a gap below where the fireplace would be.
But I don't understand why he's not putting all of this stuff outside of the theater. Now this would make me say, okay, there. Now you need to have your sources for your physical media in the room with you,
right?
But why not put them outside the soundproofed room so that the sound of all this stuff isn't in the room with you. I mean, you're doing all this work to make
and
this
you're not
stuff.
concerned about the heat coming off of anything
Yeah.
at all. Yeah.
I mean,
True.
if it were me, I would put all of this garbage into a closet someplace else, and then here we go with our 50-foot cables. All right, now you suddenly actually do need a 50-foot cable or two to go into your room or whatever. I would still leave my source device with the physical discs in that closet wherever it was, and just leave
just
the
walk over to it. Okay,
to it. I would still do that, but I'd be honest with you, I would take everything out of here. First of all, I mean, I know that there's a little space back there that it'll be open or something if you don't put your gear in it, but I don't know, put like a little bar back there or something. It's better than this. I mean, this is just a noise and heat machine that you don't need in your own theater.
Okay.
That's just me. Chad, this is the question I'm going to use to go fill up my water cup that I've already emptied. Chad would like to start backing up his Ultra HD Blu-ray discs so he can play them as MKVs using Plex. He wants to keep the full lossless audio and Atmos and DTS and all that, and DTS-X and all that stuff. But for now, his display is 1080p and standard dynamic range. So what's the best way to retain the lossless audio feedback but down convert the 4K HDR video to 1080p SDR? Could the Apple TV 4K do all of that, or will he end up with washed out colors? He supposes he could make 1080p MKVs, but then what is handling the HDR to SDR conversion? Plus, he really doesn't want to have to back up all his discs twice, since he does plan to get a 4K HDR display eventually.
Yep.
I don't know.
Well, again, the lossless audio situation, no difference there. I'm still going to be recommending an NVIDIA Shield to you. I know the NVIDIA Shield can absolutely convert the 4K down to 1080p. It can change the HDR to SDR. It, at least when I tested over at Paul McDonald's place, since he has a 1080p TV and an NVIDIA Shield, the way it converts HDR to SDR, I overall prefer in that it retains all the detail in the highlights, but it does so at the expense of the black level being a bit too high. So what should be black kind of looks gray. Now, you can fix that in your display by simply lowering your brightness setting. So it's as simple as maybe setting up two picture modes. Right. One for regular SDR content and one for content that started as HDR but then was converted down to SDR by the NVIDIA Shield. It's not that hard to switch between two picture modes, in my opinion. So you set one where the brightness has been set lower for the stuff was HDR but gets converted down to SDR. That keeps everything looking correct. And it's not, you literally just lower the brightness setting until the blacks look correct again. So not the end of the world. Use two picture modes, but NVIDIA Shield is the way to do this.
Right. Yeah, so on my Sony Ultra HD Blu-ray player, some of the special effects I've noticed, like the dinosaurs in particular, but some of the other ones too, you can see where I think the HDR to SDR conversion has not been perfect, and it seems like the entire thing is sort of washed out, and it's extra fake looking. Like the special effects, you're like, I remember, like, the kids are like, those dinosaurs don't look very good. I'm like, they look awesome. I don't know why they look kind of retarded right now, but they look awesome.
It's tough, if something was mastered at 4,000 nits, or heaven forbid they just left the metadata at 10,000 nits. Trying to convert all that down to SDR, it is a challenge. So it's not going to look perfect, but I like overall the way the NVIDIA Shield handles it by
it does really wake me when they get an HDR display.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it will. Yeah, you'll end up with one sooner than you might have thought.
I won't. Alvin has started backing up his same question DVD collection onto his PC.
But it's actual DVDs this time, all the way before Blu-rays. DVDs.
He's been using Handbrake. So what should his settings be if his goal is to retain full quality?
Not using Handbrake.
I haven't used Handbrake in forever. I did not open this. I should have opened it and looked at what my settings were, but it gave you. I remember, like, it asked you on the quality, like what you were using it on, like an iPad.
Oh, okay. Because Handbrake is a full-on transcoder.
Yeah,
so it's taking the original and then compressing it into a different codec entirely.
It is straight up. It's like almost one-to-one time conversions. Like it takes it forever. So I imagine there's something on there that's like full or whatever. But
sure. But I'd just use Make MKV, Alvin. I would just use Make MKV. It's so much easier. There's really no settings to toy with other than putting check marks next to the audio ones that you want to keep, right? Which in DVD's case, there's really not much. Like Dolby Digital 5.1. There's my audio. It's probably got a check mark next to it already. On Blu-ray, by default, it doesn't put a check mark next to the lossless audio. So you always have to go in there and put a check mark next to the lossless audio if you're backing up Blu-rays with Make MKV. But for DVDs, it's nearly automatic, and there's nothing to futz around with. The results are fantastic. And in case you were thinking Make MKV costs money, it's perpetually in beta. I mean, it's been around for like a decade now.
At least, yeah, it seems that way.
It never come out of beta, and they always say while it's in beta, you can use it for free. Now, you do have to go to their forum, and you go into the thing that says Make MKV is free while in beta, and they have a little code in there that you punch in as your activation code, and you get a new one every month. So it's a slight hassle to use it for free. You can pay them some money and never get that thing bugging you ever again. And honestly, I think Make MKV is worth it. But in case you were thinking I'm using Handbrake because it's free and I'm worried that Make MKV costs money, it doesn't have to. And Make MKV is much simpler for all this.
So which audio codec should you select for the backup process?
Dolby Digital 5.1 in Make MKV for DVDs anyway, or it might be DTS. It might be DTS ES 6.1, and you can back that up too.
So he installed Plex, but hasn't really been using it. His PC is connected directly to his home theater, so he's just been playing the backups directly with VLC. Any real reason to transition to using Plex all the time instead? Well, I imagine that there's some interface bonuses, and
for
plus,
sure. Yeah, you get all the nice cover art, and it tells you the actors and the director, and it pulls in Rotten Tomatoes ratings and does all of those things.
So, yeah, that's what I would do.
But also, you then get to use the Plex Media Player, which makes outputting that audio in its regular bitstream format so easy. Makes it so easy. So Plex Media Player. Next question. It really is. Yeah.
So he says, what should the settings be for his PC sounds card? And
if you use Plex Media Player, you don't have to do anything. Within the Plex Media Player, you will go into the Plex Media Player's settings, and you will tell it, my AV receiver can understand Dolby Digital, DTS, Dolby True HD, DTS HD Master Audio, and then it will just bitstream out the original audio exactly like it came off the disc.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, on to Eduardo. Eduardo got an SVS PB1000 2 years ago. His wife didn't like it at first, but over time she's gotten used to the giant box, and he managed to upgrade his speakers to KEF Q700 fronts and focal SIB surrounds. I don't know what those are.
Yeah, that's just a model of speakers that they have. Yeah.
So he's been really happy with the sound of the system until he saw Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom in a Dolby cinema, and now he needs more bass. Right? Sounds like you're sitting in a null, but okay. He's got an open room. It's 12 by 28 by 8.5. It's a living room, but it's open to the kitchen hallway, so it's infinity square cubic feet.
Yeah.
Anyways, also there's only truly one spot in the corner next to his couch where the subwoofer can live. Dual subs are completely out of the question. He has tried. It is definitely not going to happen.
All right. Fair enough.
All right, there you go. Yeah. All right. Okay. What's this guy's name?
Eduardo. Yes.
All right. His wife's name starts with K. All right, so here we go. We're looking at these pictures here. He's sitting directly on the back wall. There is a balcony, sliding glass door to his left. There is a big TV directly in front of him, and so he's sitting on like his theater space. He's sitting on the long wall, basically, is what it looks like here. And then, to the right is the kitchen. Yeah. And then that goes on for nearly ever. Okay. So I see he's got his subwoofer right next to the couch.
Yeah.
In the rear left corner, right next to that door or whatever. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Right next to the door out to the patio.
Okay. So a 24-inch tall, 21-inch wide, and 30-inch deep box can squeak into that spot, but nothing larger. And he's willing to spend upwards of $1,500. So which big subwoofer will give him the bass he's looking for? Dude, I know you said that no larger, but if you can go to 2 inches wide, you could get almost everything at Power Sound Audio. Okay.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Because it's the tall is fine. The 30 is great. Nothing's deeper than 30. That's over there. But a lot of it is 22 inches wide.
Okay.
So if you can go to 22 inches wide,
that's pushing your sofa over 1 inch.
1 measly inch,
Okay.
and you can get stuff for power sound audio, like their downward vented sub thing for like $1,500 or $1,400 or whatever it is, fits in that. I'm gonna look it up real quick while you tell him what you think.
Right. I was thinking I'd save him a bit of money because I've got a whole second answer to this whole thing.
Okay.
But I was thinking I'd save him a bit of money and send him to HSU. Because no, not quite. HSU, you get so their big guy, the VTF 15H Mark II, would just fit into these dimensions. I mean, it's a little over 18 inches wide. It is 24 inches tall. It's like 28 inches deep, something like that. But it just squeaks in there. With the shipping price included, the VTF 15H Mark II is $1,032 right now. So fits within his budget. But they also have the slightly smaller, uses the same driver, uses the same amp. It's just an ever so slightly smaller enclosure for the VTF 3 Mark V HP. And that's $895 shipping included. So about not quite $150 difference in price. But those, I mean, stonking output, lots and lots of output coming out of those things. They fit the size, they fit the budget. But the whole second part of my answer is you said what convinced you that you want more bass than your PB1000 is producing is that you went to a Dolby Cinema. And as we discussed with Lee Overstreet, Dolby Cinemas use butt kicker tactile transducers. And I am willing to wager that's what you experienced. Where I am feeling this bass like I've never felt it before. But that's because there was actually a big lead weight underneath your seat, physically shaking your chair.
Yeah.
And now you can recreate that at home because you can buy butt kickers that work at home. And I do recommend the butt kicker brand ones. They're the ones I like. The other bass shaking type units really are just a voice coil with a weight on them, whereas the butt kickers are like a lead weight suspended in a magnetic field, and they work just like a big fat piston to move stuff. So there are the $90 butt kicker mini LFE units, $90 each, and you basically want one of those per seat. But he's got this sofa.
Right.
So they have a unit for $200. Really not bad. It's actually cheaper than if you put like 3 butt kicker minis into a 3-seater sofa. Instead, you get one butt kicker advance for $200, and that is meant for a sofa. It's the exact right thing for a sofa. They do have their even larger $400 butt kicker LFE, but that is meant to shake your entire subfloor. You don't need it for a couch. Like literally, they say to attach it to the structure of your house to move that. Yeah, you don't need that.
That seems excessive.
I'd recommend the butt kicker advance. It's $200. Now you want a nice amplifier to power that. You want about 400 watts. 400 or 500 watts to power that butt kicker advance. I really like the Dayton Audio SA1000 amplifier. That's $400 itself. But then if
$600.
Yeah, but then if you also wanted to power the other seat that you have in there or something like that, you have that option. You can run all of that off of the Dayton Audio SA1000. Now, the last part of setting up the butt kicker, we talked about this with Lee, but it's worth repeating. Some people have reported, hey, I've hooked up a butt kicker and the thing like bottomed out on me, or it clanged at certain frequencies and stuff. I'm like, well, that's because what most people do is they just take their regular subwoofer output, which they have EQ'd for their subwoofer, and they split that with a Y splitter and feed it to the butt kicker.
Right.
But now the butt kicker is also being EQ'd, and it doesn't need to be EQ'd. It's not producing sound waves. It's just moving to the signal. So you really want to send a non-EQ'd signal out of your AV receiver, which unfortunately then means how do you get back to EQing your actual subwoofer? And for that, I'd recommend a mini DSP for $100 on top of that. So if you got the amp I'm recommending, the butt kicker advance, and a mini DSP, you'd be spending $700 on that. Right? If you then got the HSU VTF 3 Mark V HP, which honestly you might not even need, because the PB1000 is probably giving you all the audible bass that you need.
Sure.
It's just not giving you the physical feeling that you got in a Dolby Cinema, which was being created by a butt kicker tactile transducer. So $700 could get you everything you need to recreate the Dolby Cinema, and you can still hear down to 20 hertz what your PB1000 is producing. But if you still want to upgrade your sub, you could get that VTF 3 Mark V HP. I've put you $100 over your $1,500 budget, but you got this crazy huge sub and butt kicker.
How much is that sub?
$895 shipped for the VTF 3 Mark V HP.
So if you can eke that extra inch out of that,
okay,
that little space right there, you can put the Power Sound Audio V1510DF.
Okay.
Okay, that's $1,000, 999.99. Its frequency response with -3 is 18 hertz, but in-room extension they're saying down to maybe 14.
It could happen. It's got a lot of output.
In that corner, you're gonna shove in the corner anyways. You're probably gonna get pretty close to that 14. It's 79 pounds. It is 22 inches deep, 17.25 inches wide, and 23 inches tall.
Oh, that's kind of small for them.
Yeah. So it's a downfiring sub. So that's why it does this. But it's the 22 that you got to get that extra inch in there. But it's a downfiring sub, so you can orient it in any direction that you want.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right.
That's my suggestion. Okay. I lost my question, so let's go back over here. So if he gets the HSU VTF-15H Mark II, it would be 1 inch taller than the dimensions he gave if he installs the feet, but the actual box all by itself would just fit. Are the feet mandatory, or could he leave them off?
You can.
You can't.
I want to put a little bit of something, a little bit something squishy.
Something underneath there. Yeah.
A little bit something squishy between the bottom and the floor.
Here, honestly, and I don't know, because I've only seen this happen to me once with a subwoofer, and I won't even say the brand. But sometimes the threaded inserts actually go all the way into the box. Like it's a hole. So it becomes a port if you do not put a screw into it or something. Maybe. So are the feet optional? Maybe they are optional, but for sure you're going to have to put something underneath the sub to
you just don't want it directly on your hard floor.
It's going to rattle if you don't, and perhaps damage it.
It's more likely just going to vibrate your entire house.
Yeah, there's that too.
Oh, maybe he'd like that. Maybe think he'd want a butt kicker, but then all your neighbors, everyone around is also going to feel that bass. Yeah.
You got to do something. So he's sending a wireless signal to his PB1000 now. If he installs butt kickers, can those use a wireless signal too?
Yes.
As long as they got receivers, yeah. There's no reason why I can't. I don't see any reason why.
No, totally fine.
So he knows his room is bare and reflective at the moment. He's working on getting rugs and drapes added. Any suggestions we could offer to help improve his room? Well, rugs are good and drapes are fine, but really what you need is acoustic panels. And I'm going to scroll back up and look at your... Okay.
No, I'd go behind your seat first.
Piece of art behind your head.
Yeah.
That underneath the E and K sign, you need a nice, long, beautiful piece of art that is actually an acoustic panel. Yeah,
a printed acoustic panel. You can get really quite inexpensive ones from Acoustamac. And they have lots of already designs where they have the rights to use those images, or you can send them an image, any custom image that you have the rights to, and they can print it on a panel for you. GIK can also do that. They have an even larger selection of art. I actually like GIK's website interface for setting up the panels that you want to get. Very nice, but they're a little bit more expensive. But art panels can totally fit in here. And I mean, most people like to put up some kind of decoration behind their couch. And this can look like anything, any poster, any image you ever wanted to put up there, except it's also an acoustic panel.
Yeah. And you're going to want something on that left wall right by your speaker there. So another piece of art there would be fantastic.
Yeah.
Your right speaker, if the first reflection point is someplace in another room, so you don't have to worry about that so much.
Not too worried about that, but it would be nice to put something on that left wall next to your front left speaker, so that it's not reflecting quite as strongly when clearly your front right speaker has essentially no wall next to it.
Those are really the only two spots I see.
Yeah.
All right, Lior just upgraded to a Denon X4400H. Since he wants to expand from 5.1 to Atmos. His room is enclosed, dedicated theater. It is an enclosed dedicated theater. 23.5 feet long, 11 feet wide, and 8 feet high. So basically almost exactly the same as my theater. Mine's a little bit wider.
Okay.
His seats are 11.5 inches from his 106-inch screen, and due to some room limitations, his surround speakers are farther back, 16.5 from the screen, and they're up high where Dolby used to recommend placing them, but they do not any longer, though they claim they have no memory of that. The surround speakers aren't moving. That's just the way it is. That's fun. Who cares?
Yep.
He thinks he'd like to try just one pair of overhead speakers to start. He already has a pair of Polk OWM3 that he can use, but where should he place them? He'd rather not have to remount them in a different position in the future. And he does think that he might expand to 4 overhead speakers at some point. So should he go by the Dolby 5.1.2 diagram that shows top middles, or should he go by the 5.1.4 diagram that shows top fronts and top rears? He'd only be installing one of those pairs for now. Okay, I think you should 100% go with top middles.
Oh,
I do. And the reason is because your surround speakers are up high and further back, which actually would put them right basically in line with where you might end up putting top rears.
Yeah, except on the side walls instead of on the ceiling.
Right. But I think that this would put them physically further away from those speakers. And then your next set of overhead speakers would be top front heights or whatever.
Front heights?
And that is because you can't move your surrounds.
Yeah.
Because of what you just said, I think that this is the option that, those, because if you put top rears, I don't think that you're going to be able to hear much of a difference between their location
and your surrounds.
Your surround speakers.
So that's a good argument, Tom.
That's my suggestion.
Yeah, because my initial thought was, just install top fronts.
Yeah.
Because then you can do whatever. But yeah, you're making a very good point. You are convincing me as we speak. Not only that, if you install top middles, those are typically the most noticeable of the overhead positions. So that'll give you a good sense of whether you like this Atmos thing to begin with or this DTS-X thing to begin with. Yeah, I can dig that. All right. So yeah, top middles. And then if you want to have 4 overheads, you'll add front heights in the future.
That's
right. I'm on board with that.
All right. The Dolby diagram shows all the overhead speakers as being in the same distance apart as the front left and right speakers, but his front left and right speakers are basically in his front corners, probably because of the width of the screen. Mm-hmm. So if he mimicked that spacing with the overhead speakers, they'd be very close to the side walls.
Yes.
Should he ignore Dolby in this case and have the overhead speakers closer together and away from the side walls a bit? And the answer is yes. Yes, that's what you should do. We've actually addressed this a couple times in the past, but it does happen. I mean, my surrounds and stuff, my overhead speakers are kind of in line with my front speakers, which are very wide because of the size of my screen, but it is 100% because of the shape of my couch and nothing to do. Like I would if I had my way, and they'd be another foot into the room.
Mm-hmm.
But excuse me, man, what is the deal? I haven't sneezed since the last podcast.
You did sneeze a couple times on the last podcast.
What is going on? I'm allergic to podcasting. Anyways, if I had my way, I would move these in a little bit further so they'd be closer to my usual city location. But because of how my couch is located in that shape, I have to have them out wide, so they basically in line. Now, my surround back speakers, because of the door at the back of my room, are like almost right next. They're like 2.5 feet apart.
The way THX would have you set them up.
The way that THX used to suggest. But the other option was to put them really super wide, which I did not want to do to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And now that I haven't done it, it can't be done because I have to open up the walls. So
really, with the overhead speakers, the easiest way to think of it is they should be the type of distance apart from each other that your front left and right speakers would be. So we normally say front left and right speakers should be at least 6 feet apart, which means your overhead speakers should be at least 6 feet apart.
Right.
And then normally we probably wouldn't.
Usually.
Yeah. Unless your screen is really big and you got a really big room and you're very far away, you probably aren't going to have your front left and right speakers more than 10 feet apart from each other. And so your overhead speakers probably shouldn't be more than about 10 feet apart from each other. But you do take the room into consideration. You have a fairly narrow room. I agree, you don't want those overhead speakers right up against the side walls. So yeah, if they're 6 or 7 feet apart from each other, that's closer together than your front left and right speakers are because of the size of your screen. But that's okay. You don't have to have them exactly the same as your front left right. Just think of how far apart should front left right speakers generally be, and my overhead speakers should be a similar distance apart.
So if you want to try out different target curves using Odyssey's editor app, what is the process? Should you always run the Odyssey setup program from the editor app, or can you run it directly from the X4400H and then save the results with the app after the fact? I did not find that to be the case, but I went and did some research after this next question that he's about to ask. And it seems that the Odyssey editor app is quirky. Would be a nice way of saying it. Has a real nice personality, but maybe isn't all there. So not everybody has had the experience I've had with this, but many people have had many different problems that I did not end up having. So your mileage may vary, I guess is the
I mean, it seems the safest thing to do is to run it, begin the process from the app, because that it will tell you to first connect to your AV receiver via the network.
Yes.
And then plug in the microphone, which begins the Odyssey process.
Right.
But now we know that your smartphone running the app is connected to that AV receiver, so it's receiving all the information.
For any reason the receiver or your phone or anything loses connection with itself,
with your network,
or the network or whatever, then
problems.
It will, you know, the whole thing will go down, and it'll have to start the whole, you know, Odyssey problem. Now, if you do it from the receiver, that will never happen. That has never happened to me. That
I don't know that
Odyssey.
you can send those results to the app for saving purposes.
I have some people said that you can. They have, and I did not find that to be the case.
Yeah, so I'd suggest run it from the app.
So he says, Tom, mentioned his frustration with the Odyssey Editor app at having to run all the measurements again anytime he made a manual change to the target curve. I don't remember saying that exactly, but okay. Is that really the way it works, or is there somewhere he could read more about using the Editor app and hopefully streamline the whole process? Okay, if you can streamline the whole process, you should totally make a video or write it down, because apparently nobody else has. I did find a YouTube video that has strange music and no talking from what I could tell, and it's all in German.
Yes, it is. The writing is all in German. But you can still make out what's going on.
So they kind of walk you through how to use the Editor app and all this other stuff. Now, I have read that you can only keep maybe 2 different configurations and switch between them. But
really,
that's what one person said on one of their 1-star reviews.
Maybe they had an 8 gigabyte memory on their smartphone or something.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
That's not supposed to be the case.
That's not supposed to be the case, but so no. I don't. I have no way of helping you do this any better, because I am not ever probably going to open.
No, when you start the process on the app. You've connected via the network to your AV receiver. You plug in the microphone. You do the Odyssey thing. Now the app has all of those measurements.
Right.
Now in the app, you make all the changes you want to make. You can turn off the mid-range compensation. You can say don't make any EQ corrections above whatever frequencies you select. You can change the target curve. You do all that. Then you save that configuration in the app. Then you upload it via the network to the AV receiver.
Right.
But you can do all those changes in the app and then upload it again, and you can save and load different configurations. So you don't have to remeasure the whole thing every single time you want to make a change, but you do have to do all the changes in the app and then upload it to the AV receiver, which is like a 5 to 10 minute process. So it's not instantaneous. If you want to do A/B comparisons, you can't do that.
Right.
But you don't have to do all the measurements again.
Again, I read somebody's review where they're like, it took me 30 minutes to upload the new configuration. I'm like, maybe you should hardwire. Just to keep your life a little easier. He says, if he expands to 5.1.4 in the future, does he need to do all of the Odyssey stuff yet again? Or can he just tell the receiver the distances and levels for the new overhead speakers and have them apply the same Odyssey correction as the rest of the speakers? You're doing it again.
That one you need to do all the measurements again.
There's you cannot.
No way around
say anything. Just trust me. This is the speakers I have.
No, when you change the actual configuration of your system, taking away or adding entire speakers, you have to run all the measurements again.
Okay, I think that I know that we've only done 9 questions, but I am extremely tired.
We haven't even done 9. This will be number 9.
And that might be the last one. We'll see.
Ping Pong Theater.
Ed has an Xbox One, an Xbox 360, and 2 sons who both like to play Fortnite. I got my gaming computer in. My son thinks it's his gaming computer.
Yeah.
It is not. It is not. Got it in, downloaded Fortnite, opened Fortnite, was scrolling through like all the controls, and I went, oh, this is too much hassle. I'm like, holy crap. There are like so many buttons. Like,
there's all the
L
building stuff.
And stuff. L for the map, and this for that, this for that. And the keyboard that came with this thing is like a compact keyboard. So everything is like super tight. And there's no like little tactile things to let you know where your fingers are supposed to go, that keyboard's a nightmare.
Yes.
So I am gonna have to upgrade that thing eventually. Okay. So Ed only has one Xbox Live account, like most human beings. They've been playing online for years with just that one Xbox Live account, but now, since they both went to play online at the same time, with one son on the Xbox One, the other son on the Xbox 360, there doesn't seem to be any way to do that without getting a second Xbox Live account. He spoke to a Microsoft customer rep, and they suggested a $100 per year family account, but you can't already set up family sharing. But can't you already set up family sharing on the Xbox for free? Why does he have to pay more? I'm going to be dead honest with you, dude. I have always been able to play, with multiple players on games on the Xbox, like forever. And we could not get 2 players working the other day. It kept asking us to put in another account. I'm like, it's just a guest. Just create a guest account. And I would create the guest account. The guest account would be there, and it wouldn't let us play.
But it would only do it if you can do split screen on one system.
We were trying that, and it wouldn't work.
Well, Fortnite doesn't do split screen.
Well, okay. I'm talking about my problems here. Will you stop focusing on these other people? My problem was that split screen wouldn't work, and my kids were bugging me, and I don't know why.
What game were you playing? It depends on the game, if it supports split screen or not.
I think they were either playing. I think they're playing Army of Two. Which, if that split screen doesn't work on Army of Two, what does it work on?
I don't know. I don't know if it works on Army of Two.
It does.
Barely ever played that game, so
I like that game. It was stupid, but I like
it. But the problem here is that you want 2 people playing not in split screen on 2 different systems, so you do need 2 Xbox Live accounts.
I don't think there's any way around that.
No, the confusion is that, so what the customer service rep from Microsoft was talking about, they refer to the Xbox Live Family Pack, which is actually 4 Xbox Live accounts for $100 a year. So that's cheaper than getting 2 separate $60 per year accounts. You're actually getting 4 accounts for $100 a year. So that's why it's the family pack. The family sharing or family account is when you have one person who makes a purchase, and then within that household, they can share that purchase with other Xboxes. But that doesn't mean you can play online together. It just means everyone can access the same pool of software. Right. So that's the confusion. That's the difference there. But yeah, the family pack is the most cost efficient. It's $100 a year instead of $60 a year for just one.
But that wouldn't help him, though, would it? Because
because
now on two separate systems at the same time.
Yeah, but each son can have his own Xbox Live account. Ed can keep his Xbox Live account. All 3 of them, and your wife too can have her own Xbox Live account. Because you get 4 for $100 a year.
All right. So do we still purchase physical media? He asks. He's an audio enthusiast, so he begrudgingly bought Blu-rays. Hey, there's some good audio Blu-rays.
Oh, yeah.
Even though he didn't really want to repeat his ballooning DVD collection just for the lossless audio experience. And now he's begrudgingly bought an Ultra HD Blu-ray player for the same reason. But he's finding that he rarely uses it because streaming is so convenient and the quality's gotten pretty good now. He can't bear to part with the best audio. So how do we feel? My mindset on buying discs has changed considerably, probably in the last 2 years, but most significantly, probably in the last couple of months. Well, I'll say in the last year. I stopped going to movies because I wanted to go to movies. I started going to movies to support movies.
Right.
To basically tell the studios, I want you to make more of this stuff. I went to see the Avengers because I'm like, I want you to make more superhero movies. I no longer have to go to the movies to make them make more superhero movies.
I think Marvel's going to keep making movies.
I think that they've gotten the hint. Okay. Now, I went to see Wonder Woman on Father's Day. I think. So, because I wanted to support female-led superhero movie, to tell the studios that was something I wanted to see more of. I went to see Black Panther for the exact same reason in the theaters. Okay. I didn't go see Deadpool 2 in the theaters because I didn't think I needed to go see Deadpool 2 in the theaters to make them make more Deadpool movies. At this point, it's a foregone conclusion. The same thing is with discs. I'm now starting to buy discs, yes, for the audio experience, but a lot more to support those same movies for the same reasons. I want you to make more of these things, so I'm going to buy the ones that are here now.
Okay.
Because I agree with you. Streaming has gotten so convenient and it's so good most of the time that I'm like, even the Xbox One screwing up the audio doesn't even make me that angry anymore. You know, I'm still able to enjoy Doctor Strange on Netflix. You know, I'm still able to enjoy all these things. So I agree. There are some things I buy because I want the best audio or whatever, but there are now I'm more sending messages to studios by my purchases.
Yeah, I still buy physical media. I'm still buying Ultra HD Blu-rays and some Blu-rays. I don't know. I guess I'm paranoid because on movie services like Netflix or whatever, stuff does go away.
It does.
And so if anything that I want to keep, like I'm even hesitant and like, because I'm really tempted to move over to just iTunes, because like iTunes is going to have Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos. Yes, it's lossy, right? But like you say, it's getting pretty good. Yeah. It's really not a terrible experience at all. But even Apple, I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to build this huge iTunes library and one day Apple goes belly up. I'm like, if I buy the discs, I got those things forever. And I back them up, yeah.
I kind of feel like the streaming right now has made it so much easier for me to wait for sales. Like, I really want all three of the Captain America movies because I think they're all excellent. I want the first Thor movie really badly because even though a lot of people don't like it, I thought it was a lot of fun and I enjoyed the heck out of it. You know, I would like to go through and get all of the movies that I really like out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and other places too. Like next time that DC makes a movie that doesn't suck, I'm definitely going to want to buy it just for the novelty of it.
Might be a while. Everyone at Comic-Con thought Shazam looked fun, so maybe Shazam.
I thought he looks like he's wearing a muscle outfit.
Yeah, but that's the point. He's supposed to be silly.
I understand, but I'm not. I watched that preview on my cell phone, so I'm going to see it on the big screen probably after this podcast, and we'll see. But yeah, I mean, it's making it a lot easier for me to wait for sales, basically. All right, Jared. Jared has a pair of GIK Acoustics 244 panels with it's a 4-inch absorption panel, and he's got a 1 1/4 inch air gap behind it for just over 5-inch panel thickness total, I guess. But
that's the way the 244 panels come. They come with that air gap built in
already. Yeah. All right. So he wants to change from a burgundy color that he went with. So he still likes GIK, so we think he'll order some DIY materials and give them a try for making the panels himself this time. Wait, what? So the panels are already wrapped, right?
That's right.
Do you know what the outside of those, what's the frame of those things are made of?
Just wood. It's just wood.
So why don't you just buy some material and cover your current panels?
You could undo the staples that are holding in your current fabric and just replace the fabric.
That's 100% what I would do.
Yes.
I'm
in agreement. But maybe he wants to get more panels. So he's thinking the additional panels he'll build himself DIY, but he'll get the materials for that DIY panels from GIK.
Right. So GIK sells Owen Corning and Knopf, whatever, Ecosi. I don't know what it's called. Anyway, it's another insulation.
Yeah.
But there are different price points and densities. What's the best choice for a wall panel with an air gap behind it? And would a different choice be better for making corner? I didn't see the price point difference. The 6 2-inch panels of Ecos was exactly the same price as the 6 2-inch panels of Owens Corning stuff.
But that was with higher density Ecos versus lower density Owens Corning. If you go with the higher density Owens Corning, you only get 5 2-inch thick panels for even more money than 6 of the denser Ecos panels. So yeah, there's densities and there's different price points.
I mean, I didn't know that there was any difference between these things at all, to be honest with you. I didn't notice it.
So the Owens Corning is physically more rigid. The Owens Corning 703 or 705, and those are the two different densities. The 703 is less dense than the 705. Those are the type of fiberglass insulation that you would normally put in a basement where it's going right up against the concrete, and you use those like plastic discs to hold it directly on. No type of framing or anything around it. Whereas the Ecos insulation it's kind of similar to like rock wool in its structural integrity. So it's stiffer than the pink stuff, but it's not quite as rigid as the Owens Corning. So basically, if you are going to build some kind of wooden frame to hold your panel, I think the Ecos is great. It's a little bit less expensive, and but it's not quite as physically rigid. If you just want to make a panel where you're not actually putting it in a wooden frame and you're just going to wrap some raw insulation, that's where you'd really want that Owens Corning, because it's structurally strong enough all by itself that you don't even really need a frame for it. That frame is more for looks than for structure. So I'd base it on that. If you're going to build a wood structure, I'd save some money and get the Ecos.
So Gix sells Gulford of Maine acoustically transparent fabric for panel covers.
We should just mention about the density thing, because
go ahead.
It doesn't make a large difference on the acoustic properties. It really doesn't. For bass traps, definitely get the lowest density Ecos insulation, and you just cut it into the triangles, because it's lighter weight, because it's less dense for filling the same amount of area.
Right.
And that's what you want, because you want to be able to build that thing up as, triangle wedges in your corners if you're building those big corner bass traps out of this stuff DIY. So yeah, go for the least lower dense stuff, and then for the wall panels, just decide if you're building the wooden thing, then go with the low density Ecos that's easy to use. If you're not going to build wooden frames, then go with the Owens Corning.
Okay, but
fabric.
Good. Gulford of Maine acoustically transparent fabric panels for panel covers, and he likes the smoother look of the Anchorage series fabrics. He wants to go with a neutral gray this time. He uses a bias light, so he'd like to know which fabric color will result in the most accurate non-color biased result when his bias light is shining on it. He's leaning either towards wolf or slate. Which one? Or is there a better option than one of those? So he's got a bias light behind his TV. He's going to put panels on that wall behind that TV, and he wants the bias light hits it. He wants it to still look the right color. It's not going to color shift.
It's not going to shift the color in some direction.
Right. So I don't know.
So he wants a neutral gray.
Right.
So I'm not entirely sure. What you should do is get some swatches, which Gulford of Maine can send to you directly.
Yep.
You can request color swatches, but of course you have to ask them which swatches to get. Now, the slate that you talked about is one of the lighter shades, and it's within their blue palette. So it's definitely got a blue tinge to it, that slate one. They have another one called Goose, which is about similarly as dark of a gray, but it's slightly red. It's within their kind of red palette. So they have what appears to be their very neutral gray palette, where it starts with what they call onyx for like a pure black. And then it has two other ones. Wolf is one of them that he was considering, which is a darker shade of gray than either the slate or the goose, but appears to be very neutral. And then they have another one called Graphite, which is even a little bit darker than that, which appears to be a very neutral gray. So it's in between the onyx and the wolf. So yeah, he was saying he's not quite sure how dark he wants to go. I tend to like darker panels because I like the contrast. And then when the light's shining on it, you don't really notice it so much. But I think the wolf out of all of these is probably the safest bet. It seems to be kind of in the middle in terms of how deep a shade of gray it is, and it's within that very neutral gray palette that they have, whereas the other ones are either in the blue palette or the red palette. So I'd probably lean wolf.
They probably can request more than one.
I'm sure.
All right, I know that we didn't do a ton of questions, but I'm done.
But we had some very long ones. No, we got an even 10. I'm happy with that.
All right, well, we're done. So who we got left?
We have Caesar, Brandon N, Sushmit, who contacted me on Twitter, Ilongo, Luke K, who also got in touch with me on Twitter, and then some updates from Infinite Gary.
Luke Cage. Did he want to know how to fix walls in his...
Well, he spells it with a K, so it's not that Luke Cage.
Maybe he's undercover.
Yeah. Luke Cage is very good at his pseudonym stuff. It's just his name, mixed up.
He didn't even try. All right. Once again, let's thank our listeners of the week. We're going to thank Corey, David, Michael, and Earl for going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and giving us a PayPal donation. Thank you, gentlemen. Those monies will go into our coffers to help pay for our hosting and other fees.
Corey, David, Michael, and Earl, thank you so much for those donations.
Also want to thank our 61 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, patreon.com/AVRant Podcast if you'd like to send up for a monthly subscription. Well, monthly donation, automatic donation to us. And that's thanks so much to our 61 patrons over there.
I also want to thank Bob and Rob for talking us up to Optima and Acoustic Panels Canada, respectively.
Yeah, Bob, Rob, thank you very much for the support, and congrats on those purchases.
And for AV Rant, I am Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.